Hello, this is Jackie B. Peterson, author of Better, Smarter, Richer, 7 Business Principles for Solo and Creative Entrepreneurs. It's my mission to help solos, those of you who are in one-person businesses, understand and apply the 7 solo business principles to your enterprises so that you can find more financial success. Please visit my website, www.bettersmarterricher.com. There you can download the free ebook outlining the 7 principles, sign up for the free newsletter, and join the conversation on the blog. We really have a lively blog talking about the different ways that solos practice their entrepreneurship and solo businesses. It's quite interesting to see the breadth and depth and scope of solopreneurship these days. Also, stay tuned to this weekly radio show, which is posted weekly on www.soloproradio.com. Also, I have some courses and classes that are up on the website that I hope you'll take advantage of. And I just look forward to catching up with you as another solo building a financially successful enterprise. So today, my guest is Ila Asplund, and she's always had an international outlook her whole life. She loves to travel, and she's traveled far. She's been to Africa and to Asia, such places as Uganda, Egypt, and India, always immersing herself in the international social justice work, big work that she's doing. Then she created Half Sky Journeys, which creates international trips with a purpose to boost funding and awareness for global projects and empower women. I'm looking forward to this great conversation today. Hello, Ila.
Hello, Jackie.
I'm glad you can be here today. This is great.
Me too. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you.
Well, it's an interesting field that you're in. So start off by telling us about your background and when did you get your bug for travel and then recognize yourself as I'm going to call you a global soul?
Yes, I love that term, global soul, because I think some of us, even before we ever get the opportunity to travel, we sort of have global souls. And that was definitely the case for myself. I grew up in Columbia, Missouri, a little college town, and like a lot of kids, I was attracted to stories of faraway places. I read my Rudyard Kipling stories and my National Geographic magazines. And so my father worked in agriculture. He was a professor, and he did a lot of research that took him abroad. And he had always had tales from China. He'd go to Korea, Finland, places that seemed so exotic. And he would tell us about it. And finally, when I was in about 6th grade, we had the opportunity to do a sabbatical where we lived abroad. And we lived in called Aberdeen in Scotland, and I completely fell in love. I think it was the first time I had seen the ocean, the first time I had been somewhere where everyone's voice was so different than mine, and it was very romantic to me to run through the hills and look at castles and all those things. It was just the perfect time in my life to catch that travel bug, and I thought, oh, man, I'm going to check out a lot of places in this world as soon as I can. So definitely the soonest that was really a possibility was when I headed off to university. I went to the University of Washington in Seattle, and I started checking out study abroad programs that would be available to me. I kind of always had a romantic notion of going to India, and I was looking for a study abroad program in India. I was very interested in Indian textiles, and I recall actually looking through a book of study abroad programs for an India program, and there wasn't one. But there was a program to a place called Indonesia that I knew nothing about whatsoever. But I dove in because it sounded pretty exciting, and I found out that Indonesia was this center for textiles, an ancient culture of textiles. And I applied for a fellowship and was able to travel there for, I think it was about 4 months. So I studied language. I was very interested in the batik methods that come from Indonesia, all the little dots and dyes that are so fantastic. And Indonesia, there are 17,000 islands, and every one has their own style of textile or weaving or dyeing. So it was a perfect place to go for that. However, interestingly, that was in 1998, and it was at the time of the Asian monetary crisis. Suharto, who was the president there at the time, was basically being ousted. So there was some political strife that I was witnessing there being at the university. And eventually the study had to move over to the island of Bali, which is so very different than Javanese culture, the island of Java, where I had been before. But it was a really, for me, a great turn of events because I began a totally different take on my study, which was to learn more about the offering making, which if you've ever been to Bali, anyone who's been there knows that you see these offerings. They're beautiful and amazing, and they're everywhere. And there are little leaf baskets. They're called canang in Indonesia, and they are made by women basically all day, every day. So there's a culture of women and families. They are sitting around weaving these little baskets out of leaves and flowers and, making their religious offerings. So that was the opportunity for me to sit and try my hand at making these, which was really difficult to do, but learning more about the society of women in Indonesia who, in addition to doing this important spiritual work, are also feeding their families, doing a lot of labor, just taking care of business. And, after that experience, I saw that really as the trend in most places in the world where I visited, and yet at the same time, women's work is not recognized or compensated, and they often don't have rights to even the wealth that they are creating. So that kind of is what got me interested in the social aspect of women's empowerment worldwide.
Wow, you really had an awakening there, didn't you?
Oh, definitely. That's such a good
wow. What comes up for me as you were talking and how women's work is simply not recognized. I took a trip in 1997, I think it was, and I went to Kenya. I'd always wanted to go to Kenya, always. And the group that I was with, he taught cross-cultural, social acts about how people lived. Cross-cultural anthropology, I think it was, and he made sure that we saw all the different ways that people lived there. And I remember being literally in a village, that was behind the thorn bush at night, where they brought all the cattle into the area, and in a mud hut. And, there were people, the women were making beaded necklaces, which they were very eager to sell us. But there were 2 straight back chairs sitting out in the area around the mud huts. And so we got very interested in asking them, well, what was that? And they told us that even though they, the women, took care of the children, raised the crops, the children herded the animals, they cooked all the meals, they, wove brick, all that kind of stuff that they did, that the men said, the elders sat in those 2 chairs, and we said, what do they do? And they said, well, they make all the decisions. And
there you go. That kind of boils it down.
All of us just went, oh, no, oh, sure, I mean, you could just see that the women were just working like crazy to hold their families and their lives together, and the men were sitting there making all the decisions. So
absolutely. And I
saw.
witnessed a similar thing also in Kenya. It sounds like you might have been in a Maasai area.
Yes.
And I can tell you that things are changing. There are still a lot of challenges, but with especially the inclusion of young girls being able to go to school, a lot of things are changing. So it's discouraging, and yet there's hope.
Yes. We've had several people on the program, Ila, talk about the difference that it is making not just here but worldwide, that girls are going to school and getting educated, and that it's changing the world irrevocably. It's changing the world. So back to your story. So you were in Indonesia, and you really had this awakening about women keeping the economy together, weaving these beautiful baskets, and so you've moved from your interest in textiles to more of an interest in women empowerment. So how did you move from, that awareness to actually starting Half Sky Journeys? What happened?
Yeah. Oh, I guess there's a lot of things that happened there in between.
Mm-hmm.
So, I did continue to travel. I went to, I got fellowships and scholarships to explore other places, and that was when I also went to East Africa, and I was sort of looking for the similarities between those things. And, textiles was kind of the visual and artistic part that sort of wooed me into the travel, but then when I dug a little deeper in my studies, it was more around writing. And so I found myself, writing the stories of the people that I met. And eventually, when I graduated, I immediately began working in the corporate world in Seattle and learned a lot that way as well. But I knew my heart was destined to be elsewhere. So I also studied teaching English to speakers of other languages so that I could continue that opportunity to travel and also, make a living. And eventually I
good
idea,
my way, by the way.
Yeah,
that was a good idea.
If anyone wants to talk to me about that, I have a lot of experience. I also was a trainer of teachers for people who are interested in doing that very thing. So I have a lot of advice for people who want to follow that path, and I totally recommend it. It's a fun way to get to travel and to experience real day-to-day life in different cultures. But eventually I did make my way back to the Northwest and then here to Portland, working with various women's organizations, both in Seattle and Portland. And eventually I helped build an organization called World Pulse Media, and that's founded by the amazing Jensina Larson. You might know her. And while working there, wearing many hats, one of the things that we did was a trip for our donors. So World Pulse is a nonprofit organization. It's donor-supported, provides media, a media outlet for women's voices all over the world. And we did a trip to Cambodia, and it was wildly successful. It was so fun and so moving and so inspiring. And it fell upon me really to put that trip together, to lead it and guide it, and to see that it had an impact for everyone that we visited and all of the travelers. And after that trip, I started getting these referrals and requests from both the people who had traveled and from other organizations that we'd met along the way. So I found myself doing a lot of consulting work on the side around, fundraising and communications. And so that sort of morphed into my own business, as I'm sure you've heard before, Jackie, from entrepreneur-type people. And so it wasn't so long after that, I was doing that, but doing it piecemeal. And I found myself, I was traveling in the southwest of the U.S. in the desert. If anyone's been down there in those beautiful red rock canyons. And I was hiking alone, kind of trying to find my epiphany. What could this be that I am doing? What is this business all about? And what do I really want to be doing? And where could I really make the most impact? And I thought, there's already so many great organizations out there that are helping women. And there are also many sustainable travel organizations, even those that focus really on arranging trips for donors on behalf of organizations. So that concept is not something new, but there really were none that I could find that focused specifically on women and girls, which is what I cared about. And I was looking around and looked up at that pure blue sky, and I remembered this saying that women hold up half the sky. It's something that my director, actually, Jensina, had said once. I had never heard it before, and I thought, wow, that's a beautiful saying. women hold up half the sky and at least half the sky. And I kind of knew, okay, that should be the name. I've got to get to work. I got to make that official. And so in about 2010, I did that. I made it my brand. I made it official, made my website, began to make those connections. And the first thing I did was I went to India, finally.
Did you go alone or did you take a trip?
I did go alone. So I went by myself, but the first thing I did was to get involved in a really amazing conference that's put on by a very powerful organization called Vital Voices. And they connect women all over the world. They are making really political and policy changes for women worldwide. And this was a summit of women leaders in Asia, from all over Asia, and they were convening in Delhi. So I was doing some blogging and rapporteur work for them and was able to attend this such a moving conference and meet some really inspiring people. So I did travel and work and make connections in India for about 6 months. But yeah, so that's really when it became official. And I came back. I did another donor trip to Kenya and to Rwanda, and now I'm here building my business.
That's just fabulous. Wow.
Yeah.
And what it sounds like to me, Ila, is that you are very at home with the traveling and being in other countries, and you feel comfortable doing that.
Yeah, strangely, I guess I do. I mean, there were a lot of challenges for sure to traveling alone in India. I thought that I knew sort of what I was doing, but a lot of times I didn't. Mm-hmm. But I guess it's that a little bit of chaos and not knowing what's coming next is a little bit what's addictive about it to me. And I don't know, consider myself an extremely brave or courageous person, but sometimes it's just that experience of asking for what you need from a stranger that is really empowering. So I think you have to do that a lot when you travel someplace. Over and over again, it's humbling.
Oh, what fabulous spiritual work that you talk about that, asking for what you need from a stranger. That is, that's big time work.
Right. And it's the soul of fundraising too, by the way, which is needed. So.
Oh, that's fantastic. So you started it in 2010 and immediately went off to India. So what's your mission? What's your central core around Half Sky Journeys?
Yes. So I've thought about this a lot, really trying to focus what is the mission, what am I trying to do. So the tagline itself for Half Sky Journeys is investing in women through meaningful travel. So to kind of break that down a little more, because people are still kind of like, what's meaningful travel, and how does that invest in women? So I think I said this before, that there are so many amazing global organizations out there helping women and girls in all sectors. So in the economy, micro business, macro business, in healthcare, in education, in social justice. And frankly, I don't think we need another organization. I just think that we need to help the very best of those organizations to continue to get the funding, the recognition, and the support that they need to make a bigger impact. And so my personal belief from my own experience is that traveling is one of the most powerful ways, if not the most powerful way, to inspire an individual person to care about an issue and to help. So in general, I help these organizations. I help nonprofits, NGOs, or even, businesses that want to help women and girls as part of their bottom line, as part of their mission. I help them organize and do a strategic plan to create a sustainable system that makes these engaging trips part of their ongoing strategy for growth. So it's not really about just having a one-off trip that's a really fun thing and whoop-de-doo. It's about the long-term effects and the deep roots that can grow when you get a powerful, even small delegation of committed people to check things out and see how it really reflects in their life.
You know, this is really interesting to me, Ila. I had thought that your Half Sky Journeys was more about organizing individuals to take these journeys, but it sounds like you are consulting with other NGOs and nonprofits to help them include travel as one of their strategies to recruit donors, educate donors, fulfill their international mission, build relationships with women in other countries. I mean, it sounds like that's what you're doing, and rather than the individual person on the street, that you are working more with organizations who are already have a mission around women and travel. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. That is true. So people, I tell people what I do, and, people are like, wow, I want to go on a trip. How do I go on a trip? And absolutely, I want people to go on these trips and to know about it. But, in general, there are so many ways to travel, to go on a trip out there. There's a bazillion companies that will do that. But so this is for a really kind of specific kind of person who's interested in this. And yes, my primary client, if you will, is the organization that I work with. And then my secondary client would be the travelers themselves. And I do provide services. Basically, I'm kind of a concierge of those travelers. So people want to know more, if they have concerns about, well, what's this really going to be like for me on a day-to-day basis, then I will, Half Sky Journeys is there to serve the needs of the individual travelers as they prepare, as they're on the trip, because their experience is the key to the whole thing. But yeah, so I begin with the organization or the business. And, there are organizations and businesses whose mission maybe is not overtly around helping women and girls. Let's say their mission is about environmental sustainability in the rainforest. Well, more and more organizations and businesses are realizing that even if that's not the original mission of their organization, if they do not focus on women and girls, they're making a big mistake. Because, frankly, that is such an important place to focus, and women are affected in every aspect of the work. So if it's environmental, women are often the most affected by, for example, water conditions. So thinking about it and putting that angle on it, I think, is really important. And more people are seeing the importance and the evidence of the importance of that. So I think even if they chose to do a trip campaign that focuses around women and girls, even if their general campaigns are not, then that's an opportunity for me to work with them and help them to expand a little more in that area.
Oh, that's fabulous. And I don't know, I'm sure this is your experience, but I'm guessing that what you're seeing, and one of your points that you must articulate when you talk about making a strong focus on women and girls, what I read and hear from people is that when you get the women and girls involved, that improvements in their life gets, plowed back into, reinvested into their communities. They when their lives improve, they improve the lives of their families and children. They build schools. They improve health care. They make sure that their children get educated. They make sure that their local environment gets cleaned up. Whereas when you make that same sort of investment in the men, you can't guarantee that that's going to happen. Is that your experience as well?
Well, it's my experience, and it's also a fact. So I actually, on my website, I have a lot of sources around that. And I just want to make it clear, it is not about that men are necessarily making the worst choices with what they do have. It's just that half of the people, half the population of the world is not being involved in the decision making. So there's something wrong there when it does affect everyone. And yeah, there is a lot of evidence in the United Nations says empowering women, it's not just good for women, it's good for all of us. And it's universally recognized now as the core development objective for really having effective, sustainable development outcomes, that we focus on gender equality and female empowerment. And yeah, there's a lot of evidence and research for it. And it makes sense too that including the wisdom and labor of women would benefit everyone. So I
think that's absolutely fabulous that has come to be recognized, that the work that women traditionally do, which is the work in the household, the work around the children, the work in education, the work about, even taking care of the family budget, the work about what does the family eat, do the kids get educated, is so key. I know I've worked with people at the group called Cafe Feminino, and they found that when they worked with the women coffee growers, that the countries and the coffee revenues improved their villages and improved their communities. And I know that I've done reading that the economies of say like Rwanda after that genocide and Congo after their civil war, that those economies are being rebuilt by the women, and that empowering the women is what makes it happen.
Rwanda is a very interesting example of this. Now, I don't want to say the wrong statistic, but I have a feeling that Rwanda has the highest percentage of women in parliament, in government, of any country in the world.
I think that's true. I think I've heard that too, Ila.
And the amazing, environmental initiatives, and Rwanda is a wonderful place. I will probably get to this at some point, but I have some exciting things coming up around Rwanda and around coffee. So.
Oh, cool. Yeah. So, talk about some of the journeys that you've planned and some of the outcomes. We'd love some examples.
Sure.
Tell us some stories, Ila.
I have some fun stories. Well, so just in general, to start with, in terms of outcomes, raising money, number one. So part of the goal of any trip is to raise money for the host organization, and, of course, for the local organizations that we visit. And that's in the short term, maybe there's a fund that happens during the trip, but also in the long term, very long term, because people become engaged in the issues and they know the individuals that they're impacting with their generosity. And in addition to that, just the guests themselves, I've seen amazing things happen, how people who have come on the trip become motivated to become board members, to become volunteers, to become advocates for the cause that interests them. We had a case in Cambodia. One of our traveling guests was an American human rights lawyer, and she helped this amazing Cambodian member of parliament, whose name is Musa Kua. She's kind of the Aung San Suu Kyi of Cambodia, an amazing woman that we had met on our trip. And she helped her by doing events and helping her campaign and fundraise. From Colorado, she did this. So that was a really powerful relationship, and Musa Kua has gone very far since that time. And then just in terms of within the group of travelers, the friendships that are created. I mean, I see these women talking to each other on Facebook. If they're not in the same town, they are going on other vacations together, having people over for barbecues. So that circle of the traveler guests is really amazing. And then, of course, between the travelers and the people they've met from afar and the local leaders, they keep up those relationships virtually and have even made repeat visits on their own to go see those friends. And then in terms of what we do, on the ground, the places that we visit, whether it's East Africa, Asia, that we have, I feel good about the fact that we help employ local businesses. I really try to curate a bit and make sure that we find the best women-led, if possible, tour operators, transport providers, food providers. So we check out who we work with in terms of vendors, and they do well. You know, they get some recognition and money from the travel. So we do really everything to keep that sustainable and good for everyone.
Oh, that's fabulous. That's
Yeah.
absolutely fabulous. So if your primary client is the organization or the business, so as the owner of Half Sky Journeys, do you then find ways to seek out the businesses that might add international travel as part of their strategy? Do you look for them?
Definitely. Yes, definitely. So I'm always on the lookout for great organizations, and especially, obviously, those that are doing work in places that are feasible to travel to. So when in terms of who we're bringing on the trips, it's usually people who are already supporting or considering supporting that organization. And the supporters, the guests that come on the trip could be anybody. I want to make that clear because I've had a lot of men ask me, oh, can men go on these trips? And the answer is, of course. Young and old, families can go. You know, there might be an organization that might choose to have a woman-only trip. So that is a possibility. But for the most part, we need men to support women. This is really important. Statistically, it looks like, in general, more women support women's causes. So those are more often the travelers. And they're just people with the time and desire and means to travel. But, yeah, so I'm always prospecting and looking out there for organizations that could, maybe they're already doing donor trips, but they aren't able to do them consistently. That's something that I hear a lot, actually, is from organizations that maybe have a great project overseas, is that, every once in a while, a big supporter will just want to show up. They want to check things out and see where their money is going and how it's all working. And that's wonderful, but it can also really take away valuable resources and time from the existing program staff. Because what tends to happen is people drop everything and we really want to serve that guest. And that is not actually a sustainable model for giving.
Right.
So what I try to do is work with the organization and say, how could we do even a small delegation, say 3 to 5 of your big supporters who could really learn from each other and also really offer something on the ground when they go. And make sure that the organization and the leaders on the ground are compensated for the time and the work that they do. Because oftentimes these more sporadic donor trips, everybody starts to become a travel agent. And maybe not their primary role. So the idea is to really streamline the specialties of the organization and keep the travel arrangements and those services to Half Sky Journeys. And the other kind of people that we're focusing on for working with are, as I said before, maybe organizations that have an environmental or educational or a microfinance focus, but they know they want to invest in women and girls, but they maybe haven't reached out yet to those type of supporters. So, I hope to be someone that they're proud to partner with, and that shows their supporters that they do really care about investing in women and girls down to the very detail of who they choose to provide the trip. So I'm always looking for organizations. In fact, I have a form, I believe, on my website. If you know a great nonprofit that is doing work overseas that you think could benefit from doing sustainable women and girl-focused journeys, please nominate them. Tell me about them. Or if you work for them, tell me why, because I really want to keep building this bank of organizations who could benefit, and maybe there's a possibility if there are two organizations that work in different sectors, say one is education and one is health, maybe we could do a trip that benefits both of those organizations, so they both are in Rwanda or something of that nature. So
yes, I think that's
put that out
wonderful.
There. yeah, because there are so many. It's amazing, really amazing how many great organizations there are.
Oh, that's just absolutely amazing. And that all these organizations, when I'm thinking about it as you're talking, how many organizations actually do have international projects. And, if somebody is a board member or a donor or a supporter of that, of course they would want to go see what's going on, rather than, do it from a distance. And what a tremendous opportunity to build relationships, build friendships, build knowledge and understanding. And, simply by being somewhere and learning about how other people live and what they do, and, just have more of an appreciation for, the billions of ways that life gets lived well.
Absolutely. And I think more and more people, there has been a lot of economic turmoil around the world and in our country. So, people want to travel, but maybe they're a little more concerned about the financial aspect. But I think people want their travel to do double duty. I mean, if you're going to go all the way across the world, why not do something meaningful? I mean, I guess there's a time and place for the Love Boat cruise or whatever. Mm-hmm. But most of the people that I'm meeting, it's so inspiring. They really want to go make a difference. They don't want to just necessarily sit on a beach the entire time of a vacation. So this is a way for them to combine their personal passions, what they care about, and go on a trip where they will meet people that they would never have met on their own and be inspired in ways that they couldn't have imagined if they'd just gone on a tour. So hopefully in that way it's actually really an efficiency for people of a certain, Well,
it sounds, Ila, like you've developed your own skills and your own resources so that, let's say that you're putting together a donor trip to Rwanda. I'm making this up. It could be any place. That you know how to make sure that your travelers do meet people in Rwanda, let's say, or Cambodia or Indonesia or India, people who are making a difference, and have an opportunity to talk with them and spend some time with them. Is that right? Is that what you've done?
Absolutely. I mean, that's the heart of any trip that we do. I mean, if you're going to go all the way to Cambodia, for example, yes, you better see Angkor Wat. You got to, learn about the Khmer Rouge, and there's certain tour-related things that you need to do, but we always bring it back to the theme of the trip, and it's really about the people that we meet.
Yes.
On the trip.
So the traveler gets to interact with the real population, with people who are living there, working there, doing projects there, and are happy to show somebody what they're working on.
Absolutely, yeah. And those are always the best parts of the experience, for sure.
Mhm. Mhm. And so, how is it for the people on the other end of the trip, where the people say, of Rwanda, the citizens of Rwanda, who you bring visitors to them, or of Indonesia or India or Cambodia, where you bring visitors to them, are they excited about it as well?
Oh, yes. I mean, to the point where you just feel like, really? Am I that big of a deal? When you show up, because people are so moved that you have made that effort to come all the way and visit where they live. I find the relationship is pretty amazing. And so with World Pulse, for example, in Kenya, there was a really great women's organization, and they did what they called a Rafiki Club. And Rafiki in Swahili means friendship. So in the months before we ever departed for Kenya, we had Rafikis that we were making online. So through social media, through World Pulse and Facebook, Skyping, people were kind of matched up with other women leaders that they were going to eventually meet on this trip. So there was an anticipation, getting to know someone from afar, and then it was just mind-blowing to show up, have an event, and be welcomed with people singing and dancing and embracing you that you had seen a thumbnail picture of before, and they're a real person, and so are you. And there's something that is just, you can't get that from a slideshow at a fundraiser. This is not the same thing. This is a real relationship, and the women had gifts for one another. So I really, really love that model of sort of anticipating the relationships. And, of course, there's relationships that you didn't anticipate and knowledge to be exchanged. I remember on one trip, I think it was in Rwanda, that we had a guest who was a leadership expert. She did seminars. This North American woman has a very successful business doing women's leadership training. And, we went to a meeting with these Rwandan women leaders who had done a lot in terms of helping genocide survivors, and especially women who were HIV positive. And these were women who had nothing in terms of material wealth, and actually had been through so much trauma that it's even hard to conceive of. And yet, they found the will to organize, to get women together, to make sure that they could get access to the antiretroviral drugs that they actually legally did have access to, but were being withheld from them. So, talk about leadership. We are so fortunate, for the most part, in our North American culture, to be able to think about, how are we building our team? How do we interact with one another? And then there are people that are just doing it because they feel it and they are passionate about it. And
because it's human to human.
Yeah, and so that kind of inspiring interaction is just irreplaceable.
Oh, that's just fabulous. I love those stories. And you were right. I was thinking as you were talking, Ila, that, American women are very empowered, and we would get in a situation where we were there with people who needed the antiviral drugs and were not getting them, and we would, of course, just step forward because that's what we would do. That's what we do in our own country. And so, we would say, wait a minute, this isn't right. We're going to make sure this happens. And, and really model something for other parts of the world, as well as being good people and, talking about what's right. Let's do what's right here, not what makes money, not what gets press, not what looks good in the pictures on the brochure, but what's right for our fellow human beings, human to human.
Absolutely. And it just makes you think, all right, maybe there's things that I'm complaining about, and what's stopping me? The inconvenience, right? This woman had to walk 10 miles on a dirt road to organize. And for me, maybe I don't feel like sending an email, or so it definitely puts things in some perspective, and it's really inspiring.
Yes, I can see that. So, back to your business, Half Sky Journeys, are you a solo? Is it you doing all of this hard work?
So, at the moment, it is me, but I would hesitate to say that I do all the hard work by myself. I certainly enlist a lot of support from around me. I have a wonderful intern, Shannon O'Malley, who is volunteering her time with me. And I want to say that, too. There's a shout-out on my blog for anyone else who has skills to offer or wants skills to gain. There's a description of some things that are needed if you have time to volunteer and want to be involved and see what the real deal is of entrepreneurship, with a social entrepreneurship. I'm happy to talk to people who are interested in that. And also, when I am working on a specific trip, I employ other vendors and providers. So it's a collaboration, really, between me and the leaders of the organization that's hosting the trip. So, right. Yeah, it's me, but I would never claim to be able to get anywhere doing this by myself. So.
No, well, even in our solopreneur business model, which we talk a lot about on this show, we're really talking about outsourcing a tremendous amount of work, to a virtual assistant and a webmaster and an agent and a photographer and, all kinds of interns and support people. And, of course, you need that group of people, but that you maintain yourself doing the key elements of the work that really require your experience. And what I can see happening in your work is the more that you do it, the more resources you have and the more people that want to be involved and would step forward and say, oh, gosh, the next time you go to Cambodia, I'd like to, be the vendor or come here or come to this location, or we can provide your travelers this sort of service. And, it would compound on itself, in other words. The more you do, the more you would.
It does. It really does. It totally compounds, and it's exponential. And I think for myself and maybe other solo, especially social entrepreneurs, I think, it's easy to think, oh, this is so overwhelming, I have so much to do. But once you start doing it, and it does go like that, I think it's more about being ready to accept the potential success and the potential amount of people contacting you and all of that. Yeah. So you got to keep your arms wide open to receive all of that once you are really getting busy.
Yeah, I can imagine you doing that. I think this is a wonderful niche that you have found, and it's obviously a needed service, and your heart just speaks, every time that you talk about how wonderful the work is and how wonderful it's not just your work, it's the work of all the people that you interact with. And, you're a conduit to help those relationships build and, people to know each other around the world. And if we know each other, we're a lot less likely to take advantage of each other and certainly a lot less likely to go to war with them.
Absolutely. No question
we know
about it.
Yeah. So what, I'd like to know, have you got plans for growing Half Sky?
I do. I have so many plans that it keeps me up at night. I do. So I have some really cool ideas in the works. And one of them, obviously I want to be doing, several trips per year because there's actually such a long turnaround time between getting together with the organization, deciding what we're going to do, and then the trip planning. A year is a pretty good average for that. Yeah. So it's always a long-term thing. So if I have several in the works, then they can kind of, fan out into the future. And, the more trips I can do, then I can begin to employ people on a more regular basis, et cetera.
Right.
But I do have, I'm really excited about an idea, which is to create a scholarship fund. So on every trip to ask people if they want to add to a fund, and I'm thinking of it sort of like a daisy chain of women with, let me back up. So usually what happens is we have a delegation of North American travelers, majority women, that go visit someplace in the developing world. But what I would love to see is if among our group of North American women, we also had people from different countries coming with us. And specifically, I thought of this when we visited Cambodia, for example. We met so many amazing, inspiring survivors of the Khmer Rouge who had, one of our hosts was the amazing Luong Ong, who wrote a memoir called First They Killed My Father. And she had actually been a child soldier during Khmer Rouge, escaped, and was able to come to the U.S. when she was about 12. And she has a fascinating story to tell. She's lived in America, so she's bilingual and can translate. She's a wonderful writer. So she has this experience of surviving genocide. Well, then I went to Rwanda with the group, and there are so many people with amazing stories of survival there. And I thought, wow, we need to bring people from Cambodia to Rwanda and share and learn, like, how was this for you? How did you heal from this? And, oh, my gosh, it's not just about North America to the greater developing world. And, keep paying that forward and have a daisy chain of people who have similar experiences or are in similar industries, and always have them along on the trip, because I think that would be a really priceless value to have.
Oh, it would be. It would be.
Yeah, so I'm excited about that possibility. Oh, and I wanted to mention also, you're saying about growing sort of the bank of potential NGOs and businesses that might benefit from doing a journey. In addition to that, I meet a lot of photographers and videographers, many of whom have, documentary experience overseas, who want to be involved in Half Sky Journeys. And please contact me, give me your information, send links to your portfolio, and I would love to also be creating a bank of this talent. There might be opportunities. They might be volunteer or paid. I can't really say, depending on what the trip is. But, it's essential that we document these trips as we go, and that we use that media into the future to help the organizations to grow and to have just a good record of the experience. So photographers, videographers, please go to my website.
And not only that, Ila, it's essential. It's critical and essential that we as North Americans get to know other people and get to know who they are, not a glorified version of them, but a real heart-to-heart version of them, so that we know other people. And, it seems like the minute that happens, we open our minds, we open our purses, we open our piggy banks, we open our creativity, because we know that, we have all this stuff because of where we are, and, the meaning in the world is to help other people. So I think that's another reason that you need to have all this documented and, videographed and photographed, so that we can know other people. We
Absolutely. It is really, it's a precious thing to bring back from the trips, and it helps you remember. For our Africa travelers, actually, we're so excited and still motivated and holding to the memories of that trip that they themselves organized a reunion party a year after to see, like, well, how did this trip affect you? What ripples are still flowing into your life from doing this trip? And, of course, being able to show video footage of all of us on the trip was like, oh, yes, that was so amazing, and I forgot about that. So it's really great.
So, Ila, we've talked for, our time. We're running out of time. I've had a great discussion with you, and I just know that some of our listeners will be very interested in contacting you and signing up for your newsletter, if not one of your trips. So why don't you tell our listeners how to get hold of you, how they can find you?
Sure, you bet. So please, first of all, visit the website. It's www.halfsky.org. That's O-R-G, so HALFSKY.org. Anyone can email me. It's Ila@halfsky.org. That's ILA. Phone number, too, is 503-877-4759. And I do want to, I didn't quite get a chance to mention this, but there's an amazing coffee company, sustainable coffee company called Sustainable Harvest, and they actually have headquarters here in Portland, and they do this really amazing work about the life of the coffee bean, how it goes back from being in our store to being in the hands of individual farmers, and they're creating transparency in that whole chain. And we're looking at doing a trip to Rwanda in 2014 that's going to be all around coffee and connecting to those local growers and specifically to women growers. So if you're interested in that, please go to the website, sign up for the e-newsletter, And the other thing coming up in probably 2015 will be a trip to India, and I'm going to reach out to a delegation of top corporate leaders, mostly probably from Portland, who might be interested in making decisions about their corporate social responsibility initiatives. Who do they want to invest in terms of the great work that they're doing on top of their corporate work? So if you are a leader of a corporation who would appreciate someone helping you curate which nonprofit might be appropriate for you to invest in, and we are working on that for 2015, and it will be in India. So
wonderful. Ila, you're full of heart and courage and energy, and I love what you're doing, and I've loved our discussion today. And listeners, I want to remind you that this is Jackie B. Peterson, author of Better, Smarter, Richer, 7 Business Principles for Solo and Creative Entrepreneurs, and you're listening to us on Solo Pro Radio. Please check in and make Solo Pro Radio one of your regular stops during the week to listen to our great discussions with our fabulous solos who are doing all kinds of things like Ila all over the world and in all kinds of different fields. And if you'll go to my website, bettersmarterricher.com, you can download the free ebook outlining the 7 principles. Sign up for our free regular newsletter, again, to encourage you in growing your enterprise, and join the conversation on the blog. So next week we're going to talk to Kathleen Gage, and Kathleen has written a book called Power Up for Profits, The Smart Women's Guide to Online Marketing. Should be another great conversation just like we had today with Ila. So I'll talk to you next week. Take care, and goodbye.